Argentina is famous for its tango, barbecue, and Malbec wine. When we were planning our time in South America, the first place we wanted to go and were most excited about seeing was Buenos Aires. It did not go the way we hoped. We spent 38 days in Argentina, and in this episode, we'll be giving you an overview of what's happening there currently, what went wrong for us, what we'd do differently, how safe we felt, and at the end, we'll include all of our costs. I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way. If you're coming to Argentina because you heard this is a great budget destination, or that bringing American dollars into this country gives you great buying power, or maybe it's a great place for slow travel, or even a place that you could retire affordably, we're going to stop you right there. All the research you may have done on the blue dollar rate and how cheaply you can buy things here no longer applies.
This isn't going to be one of our typical videos where we talk you through all of the cool things to see and do while you're here, because this may not be the year that you want to visit Argentina. And we don't say that lightly, but we had a lot of experiences here that really made us question some of what we thought we knew about Argentina. And for context, we were visiting from October 29th through December 6th. And most of that time was spent in Buenos Aires, but we had a couple of other side trips planned as well. What we're sharing here today is our personal experience, and you may encounter something totally different. But when we checked with other people, they were all in alignment with the same experience that we had.
And we'd like to know what your experience was. So if you've been to Argentina, especially recently, let us know in the comments below. Before we talk about some of the country's money issues, we want to talk about our experience arriving in Buenos Aires, which was a little bit of chaos.
As we were heading into Buenos Aires, we got wind of an airline strike that was happening by transportation workers. And unfortunately, that is one of the consequences of some of the economic changes that are happening there. Now, Buenos Aires was not our final destination. It was just going to be a layover as we were heading into El Calafate.
We weren't even sure we were going to get into Buenos Aires because we had a connecting flight. We did manage to get on that connecting flight. We did manage to get into Buenos Aires, but it turned out it was after midnight and we had to get on a flight with Fly Bondi the next morning. We said, we'll just hang around the airport for 3 or 4 hours. It's not that big a deal. It's a very early morning flight. Well, it turns out that flight was the one that was canceled. There was no customer service agent. We had to go to one of the Fly Bondi agents that was standing at the desk and ask him, what can we do about this? Can we reschedule something? He's like, I have no control over any of this. Here's an email address that you could talk to. So we said, okay, we'll send an email and we'll have to figure out what we're doing now we don't have any place to go.
I booked some last minute accommodations so that we could sort out our plans and figure out what to do. And as it turned out, we didn't hear from Fly Bondi for 36 hours. So that wasn't a great situation. Our intention was to go to El Calafate to see the Perito Moreno Glacier, and then immediately after that, go to Iguazu Falls and spend a few days there.
Although we don't always get cash when we first arrive in the country, we knew that some of the things we had to pay for on these special trips in Argentina were going to require cash. So the first thing I did was look for some sort of way to get money in this airport. There was no obvious even cash exchange place, which we tend to avoid anyway, and I couldn't even find an ATM. So I went to the information booth. They said, oh, there is an ATM back that hallway down there. There's a bank you can see around the corner. It's like, okay, great. Went to that ATM. The person there couldn't speak English, but he did know enough English to say, your American credit card and your American debit cards are not going to work. Apparently there's 2 types of machines in Argentina. One's an ATM for national cards, local cards, and one's an ATM for international cards. The airport only had one for local cards. So no cash for us. We just had to leave the airport. Judy did a lot of research on money in Argentina and found out that there's a blue rate, which is a legal way to exchange money at a better rate than you get sometimes with credit cards or other uses. So we said, okay, we'll dig into that. But the other recommendation was if you want to get close to the blue rate price, use Western Union to get money, which I thought, perfect, great. I just did that in Morocco. It worked out really well. There was one little mistake. We'll have a full detailed article about all the things we went through with this Western Union process. But short story long, we couldn't actually use Western Union the way we wanted to. We couldn't get the cash we wanted to, so we had to find another way around this.
Now, one of the things I had also read is that there's a lot of unethical people, or you could maybe be not getting the best exchange rate. And so that you should talk to your hotel or accommodations for their recommendation of where to go, which is exactly what we did.
Right. There are really good currency exchange places, and they're called cambios. But there's also very sketchy cambios. And usually they're the ones that are out in the street going, cambio, cambio. So we were avoiding them. We went to the place that our hotel recommended, and turns out it was a really nice process. But the problem with this cambio place was they needed cash, and we don't walk around with a lot of cash on hand. It's not,
especially we were coming from Fez.
Yeah. So Moroccan money, no. You want US dollars or euros if you're going to these change places. And I had one $100 US bill, which worked out great. It was a good exchange rate. There weren't a lot of fees on top of it, so I felt the process was good. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough money to carry us through this whole trip of going to Iguazu Falls, and if we were going to reschedule El Calafate, we didn't know how much cash we were going to need throughout Argentina.
And when you are exchanging money, they need to be crisp, clean, unmarked bills. Now, one positive note that we didn't expect was that because of all of the changes happening in Argentina, our credit card exchange rate was quite good. But there's a tipping culture in Argentina, and a lot of places were not allowing us to put a tip on our credit card. In fact, I felt like overall in our experience in Argentina, people wanted cash as much as possible. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about public transportation. The metro system here has something called a SUBE card, and that's what you use in order to use all of the public transportation. Buses do not accept cash.
Now, their subway, called Subte, which is just Spanish for subway, has kiosks in it. So we found one, went in there, all the machines were there, but there were kiosks for recharging the SUBE cards. And then there was a person that was working a ticket booth, so we went up to that person and said, can we buy a SUBE card? Nope, can't get one here. It's like, well, where do we get them? Yeah, kioscos. Okay, so we got to go to a kiosco, which is basically a convenience store. Unfortunately, every time we walked into a kiosco or walked into another subway station, the same thing happened. There was no SUBE cards to buy. Sure, you could recharge them, but that didn't help us.
Can't find them anywhere.
There's a supply chain issue with getting these cards. So we were kind of between a rock and a hard place. Unfortunately, we'd also heard, go to main subway stations and you'll be more successful. Well, we went all throughout the city to main subway stations and still struck out. Fortunately, we eventually did find a kiosco that had cards, and the person that was behind the counter helped us to go ahead and also top them off, which was super convenient and helpful.
Gracias.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Now, the bus system in Buenos Aires is extensive. Subway system's good too, but it's only for certain dedicated paths. You can get anywhere with the buses. Unfortunately, the buses don't take any cash, so without that SUBE card, you're not getting on them. And you don't just tap on and tap off like in other cities. The bus driver will deduct money from the SUBE card, but you need to tell that person where you're going.
Or at least know how much that route costs.
Yeah, if you're a regular.
But because transportation prices are always changing, you don't always know that either.
The other complication about buses is they have bus numbers, which you see in a lot of cities. But their routes are very complicated, and sometimes the same bus number doesn't go to the same destinations. It may veer off. There's a blue line, there's a red line, there's a yellow line for the bus 51 or whatever the number is. And so we were confused by that at first. We tried to get on the wrong bus a couple times. They're like, no, that's not a destination. Luckily, we're announcing our destination, so we actually got some feedback. The other thing is people were holding their hands up in the air.
Hailing buses. So even though you're at a dedicated bus stop, you have to let them know that you want that particular bus, or they don't always stop for you. Eventually we made it to our destination though, which was great. The main reason we wanted to take this particular bus was because we wanted to head to a specific place to get a new camera for videotaping in Iguazu Falls. Our current camera has been a little bit on the fritz and it's not waterproof. Yeah. And we wanted to be able to get it wet if we needed to. We also were going to head to El Calafate and we needed some warmer clothes, jackets specifically, because we were going to be walking on a glacier. And we packed for 3 seasons, not for 4. We weren't planning to keep it, but we knew we at least needed to have something warm for that excursion.
Yeah, and this was a big shopping mall. I was surprised at how much was there and how many people were there. I mean, it was around Christmas time.
It was early November. Santa was there and all the rest, and it was crowded.
And there was an authorized DJI store at this mall, which was perfect. We walk in there, they had everything we wanted, and I looked down at the price. I pulled out my currency converter. I'm like, wait a minute. And I looked up what the price would be, and it was $450 in the US. The price converted from Argentine pesos was over $1,200. So we're not paying $1,200 for a $450 camera. It's not happening.
You had to basically lift my chin off the floor. I really thought that there was some misunderstanding of some way, but it turns out that there are tariffs on imported goods, so they make it really difficult for people to buy things that are imported.
And that doesn't just apply to electronics. Anything that's imported, like you wanted to get new sneakers, right?
Right. And we were looking at jackets, but primarily I just kind of grabbed a pair of Nike shoes just for grins. And it was $50 online. And the price in Argentina was $211 on sale. Yeah. So a huge markup over what we would normally pay. We just left empty-handed.
We're noticing how expensive everything is here. And how do Argentinians afford it?
We are used to. It's very common. You always, everything is expensive here.
Wow.
We see offers or discounts. We have a very good eye on that, so we take advantage on that. I have the opportunity to travel to United States, and there is different. You have a lot of promotion and discounts, and here is not very common.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Here is very difficult.
Okay.
We are so passionate with the things that we care that everything is personal for us.
Okay, yes, makes sense. We appreciate your time so much.
So we recommend if you need anything on your trip to Argentina, bring it with you. Don't expect to buy anything there.
So we were kind of confused because the research that we did was just from a year ago, and we couldn't really understand what had changed. And that is because there's been a new incoming president, and there's been so much artificially inflated prices in Argentina with the cost of the peso that in trying to right-size the economy, there have been sweeping changes. So we're not saying that Argentina will never be a good place to visit. We're just saying right now that this might not be the cheapest time of year to go. We did find that groceries were pretty inexpensive, so that actually wasn't a bad thing. We ended up shopping quite a lot versus going to restaurants, where we did find that prices were very high.
Yeah, when we looked at the reviews for a lot of the restaurants, it was terribly confusing because, you see, like on Google, you see all the menus, and you check on the menu prices, and you're going, wait a minute, it's $1,100 here. Why does it say $130 there? Well, the peso changed so much. It's just very different pricing. You can't trust what you're reading online about what the prices are.
So what does all this mean for travelers? Generally speaking, everyday items are more expensive. Gasoline prices are higher. You'll notice that when you are trying to do excursions, they're going to be more expensive. Overall costs are higher, except for things like groceries, as I said earlier. If you're coming from a wealthier country like the US, a steak dinner here might still feel affordable.
If you're like us and you're watching a lot of videos about Argentina to get prepared for it, and you see all these articles about get the blue dollar rate because it's going to be better. Don't use your credit cards because the exchange rate's going to be wonky and horrible. None of that applies anymore. It's really very different now. And 6 months from now, a year from now, it may be different again. So make sure you're looking at very current information.
Now, one of the things that we didn't think was overly expensive was accommodations. And not by choice, but we ended up having to be in at least 4 different accommodations while we were in Buenos Aires due to canceled flights.
We weren't supposed to be doing fast travel in Buenos Aires. Maybe through Argentina, but not Buenos Aires.
Our original itinerary was going to include Iguazu Falls at the beginning of our trip, and we were going to be flying on Fly Bondi. Because we needed to check out our accommodations early and our flight was later in the day, we just thought we would hang out at the airport and get some work done.
Now, we were there so early that our flight wasn't even up on the board yet. And so we're having some food, we're getting some work done, we're going, and I kept looking at the board, our flight's not up, our flight's not up. Finally, I said, I gotta check, our flight's gotta be up there by now. Walk over to the board, and yeah, the last item on the board is our flight from Flybondi, and nicely right next to it, it said, canceled. I'm like, okay, this is wonderful. Why is this one canceled? There's no strike. What's going on? So we immediately grabbed our stuff, put it together, wheeled over to the customer service booth, and got there, one of the first people. They immediately knew I was there. They said, yes, your flight's been canceled and your refund is on the way. That's it. No options, no, let's reschedule something for you.
One of the things that we learned while we were in Argentina is that Flybondi is such a discount airline that when fuel costs are too expensive, they just don't operate. And so we ended up later on booking through Aerolíneas Argentina. We know people who've had much better luck also through LATAM Airlines. We would highly recommend that you avoid Flybondi for this reason.
Yeah. While we were in the airport, we did try to reschedule our trip.
On a different airline.
Try to figure all this out. But because we were trying to do it for the next day or that day, trying to get an immediate flight to make sure we didn't have to reschedule our accommodations, we couldn't get a good price. I mean, we were getting prices that were 4 or 5 times what we originally booked. And it's like, there's no way. We have to just abort, go back to wherever we're going to stay now, which wasn't a place. So we just settled back down at the airport so Judy could rebook that and then figure out where their next plan was.
So at the airport, I found another hotel to check into so that we could sort out the details of what to do next. And we incurred another Uber cost to get there. We still really wanted to go to Iguazu Falls. And fortunately, we never do this, but we didn't have any forthcoming trips that blocked us. So instead of having it be at the beginning of our trip, we shifted it to the end of our trip where we could find some better prices for flights.
We never could work out an affordable flight to El Calafate. And then when you add to that the cost of the excursion, the cost of getting some winter clothes to be able to walk on the glacier, the cost of the various tours and things that just suddenly went up. All that seemed to say, hey, you're not doing it this time around. You'll have to come back to South America, enjoy the glacier experience in the future.
As full-time travelers, it can get really expensive to have to pay for travel insurance that covers your delayed or canceled flights. We do have travel health insurance that covers us for health, but we rely on our Chase Sapphire Rewards program card to cover the lost fees that we incurred through all of these cancellations. We'll let you know later if they were able to cover everything for us, but our fingers are crossed.
So what would we do differently? First of all, if I'd known how hard it was going to be to get cash in Argentina, I would have definitely planned ahead. We knew that ATMs here were a bad idea, and they are. They, for one thing, limit the amount of money you can get out, so $70 was the limit, and then they automatically say, well, you now have to pay $10 just to get your $70 out, which makes it a high percentage rate for the money you just got. I would avoid those at all costs next time.
We also ended up needing to pay cash for our accommodations in Iguazu Falls, which was not something that we intended. And I think that this is all tied to all of the currency issues that they're having there. We booked it through booking.com. It was not an Airbnb per se. So this really caught us off guard. Next time we would pay closer attention to how we need to pay for accommodations before we finalize those plans. This was new for us.
Yeah.
But we did have a few things that went well.
Definitely. In the future, I would really rely on the currency exchange system that's in Argentina. It really wasn't a bad experience. The reputable exchange services are wonderful. And I would just make sure that before we went to Argentina, we add up all the potential costs we would come up with in cash and then say, all right, we're going to get US dollars or euros. Make sure they're $100 bills or 100 euro bills and take those to the cash exchange service and get local pesos. Now, what I wouldn't do, I wouldn't exchange it all at one time. I would make sure that I exchanged just as much as we needed for a period of time because, for one thing, exchange rates change all the time while you're there. Another thing is, once you get them into Argentine pesos, you're not going to be able to convert them back at a good rate into American dollars or euros. So don't do all your money at one time.
Now, we didn't intend to have it work that way, but it did for us, so we won.
We won. I don't feel like I won, but okay.
And in our particular situation, we lost so much time, and we're actually a little bit deflated by all of the things that we couldn't do or in the order that we wanted to do them, that we kind of lost our way a little bit in Argentina. And it worked out okay. We ended up using it more as a working trip than a sightseeing. So we didn't see some of the things that we really wanted to see, but we got our finances in order. In fact, we have a couple of great videos that if you haven't checked out, we hope you will do that. That's what we were spending a lot of our time on.
So thank you for messing up our trips so that we could work even harder on this channel. We are proud of what we produced, and I guess that's a win.
And although we didn't eat out at all of the cool restaurants that we wanted to, we cooked, and that was fine. And we probably ate a little bit healthier that way, so that was a win too.
We learned the supermarket system there. It's really nice.
And there was a lot of fresh fruits and produce, and
Yeah.
I highly recommend that. I do also want to say that you shouldn't be drinking the water in Argentina.
Right.
We drank bottled water while we were there, and we recommend that you do the same thing.
That's kind of been the rule for South America in general.
And we did get to go to Iguazu Falls, which we really wanted to do. It was a bucket list place. If you haven't checked out that video, we hope you'll do that.
It's gorgeous. It really is. Just check it out. Now, this is a hot topic, and we have to talk about it too. It's safety. Overall, safety in South America for us has been a non-issue, but it is still something that people have warned us about.
Yes, we were told that we should not be wearing expensive watches, rings, leave your necklaces at home because they could just be ripped off of you. Now, we were very fortunate. We didn't have anything like that happen. So our experience may not be typical, but everybody told us these were things to watch out for. We were also told to watch very carefully with your cell phones on your table if you were outside at a restaurant, that somebody could just walk by and steal it from you. And even if you were holding it while you were walking, you'd hold on very tightly because it was very quick for people to steal them.
Now, in reality, I don't know if this is much different than any other busy touristy city, but because we were warned so much, we were taking extra precautions. Now, our first hotel was in an area called Retiro, and there's a main boulevard there that's kind of touristy. There's a lot of men and people in general walking around with signs saying cambio, cambio. They want to exchange your money. Those are not the reputable exchange places we were talking about earlier. Don't go to those. But it made it feel a little less safe. And the shops along that strip were convenient. We had to buy some adapters for Argentine plugs. So we went in there and with cash had to buy the adapters. I couldn't use a credit card at that place. It just felt like this area was not our best place to stay, and luckily we weren't planning on staying in that area anyway.
Now, it didn't really feel seedy, and our hotel was quite nice.
Yeah.
But we did notice that if you walked a little bit farther down that road, that one of the nicer restaurants required you to be buzzed in.
Yeah. Which was confusing. I couldn't open the door, and then, okay, now we can go into a restaurant. First time ever for us, I think, being buzzed into a restaurant.
One of the Airbnbs we were at had a security guard that was operating during the weekends only.
And we still had to use a code to get in the building all the time, and even to get out of the building. So it was very secure. A lot of the places, a lot of the buildings we saw all had security codes or key locks.
We didn't love our actual accommodations in Recoleta. However, it was a great area, and we really preferred that to any of the other locations we were in. In one location, we straddled Palermo Soho and Palermo Hollywood. That one was a little bit tricky because a lot of the restaurants were also more nightlife places, bars and stuff, and we didn't really feel so comfortable getting food later at night because it just kind of felt more of a party scene.
Now, our accommodations that we stayed in for most of the time we were in Buenos Aires was actually at the other end of Palermo Soho, which was quieter. It wasn't near the Hollywood end, which had all the bars and everything else. And we actually enjoyed walking around there. It felt very safe. It was quiet. It had a lot of choice for breakfast and steak dinners and places that you would probably want to go.
Now, despite all of that, the next time we come, I probably would book accommodations in Recoleta.
It's a pretty nice area.
Buenos Aires had a definite European feel to it in a lot of ways. In fact, there was even a little Italy there, and we spent some time there.
Plenty of Italian influences all over the town. It's It's kind of nice. So before we talk about costs, what are our takeaways? Well, overall, the currency situation here is the biggest problem and something that you need to be aware of when you're getting ready to go. Make sure you do your research. Don't just look at anything that's older than 6 months because it's probably invalid. And if you're comfortable with what you're going to spend, then this is a great place to come.
And we didn't mind cooking, and the wine here was actually pretty affordable.
That's true.
So if you aren't necessarily needing the huge meat culture and you didn't come to have big fancy steak dinners every night, we think that you'll enjoy it here, especially if you can find more of the free things to do and you brought what you need so you don't have to do a whole lot of shopping while you're here.
Don't do shopping here.
It was still an affordable destination for us overall, but we're Americans, so that helps.
So let's talk about what we spent for 35 days in Buenos Aires.
Our Iguazu Falls travel costs are in their own episode, and you can check it out through the link in our description. That 3-night trip cost us $1,240, but we aren't going to factor that into our Buenos Aires trip. You can see a full breakdown of costs in that video. We've been trying to get a Charles Schwab checking account to reimburse us for our non-network ATM fees and possibly a lower rate for foreign rate adjustment charges, but we're having to wait for that card until March when we get back to the US. So we paid a $10 fee twice for using a non-network ATM, and as we mentioned, Argentina throttles how much you can take out at one time to be only $70, at least all of the ATMs we went to. So our total bank fees were $24. Dining out and groceries cost us $1,765, which breaks down to $50.43 per day or $25.21 per person per day. That number is low because we cooked for the majority of our meals, except for breakfast, and groceries aren't as hard hit as the other costs here. A hair color and cut was $146. We didn't book any tours or excursions during this visit. We paid a whopping $153 for local transportation, and $144 of that were Ubers. And those were predominantly to get to and from the airport or between accommodations. As we mentioned, we couldn't use public transportation until we found a vendor that would sell us a Sube card. Lodging was $1,500, which again would have been less had we not had to get all these last-minute accommodations on multiple occasions due to canceled flights. The cost wasn't bad though, at just under $43 per night or $21.43 per person per night. The cost for both of us to get from Fez to Buenos Aires, including an overnight stay in Madrid, was $329 or $165 per person. We spent $3,588 for 35 days in Buenos Aires. That's excluding the cost to get to Buenos Aires. That breaks down to be $102.51 per day or $51.26 per person per day. Thank you so much for watching. The best compliment that you can give to us is to share our videos with your friends and family.
And check out findingginamarie.com where you can find articles, downloads, our free community forum, and take a peek at our behind-the-scenes perks if you want to join our gelato membership.
Until next time.
Until next time.
We did check with several local people and other visitors who were there the same time as we were, which was from December 29th until December 3rd. Nope.
Backwards! Time travel! Yes!